Perek Yud Zayin, Mishnah Dalet. We're now going to discuss a very important Mishnah, and we're going to discuss three categories of muktzah. The first is a kli shemelachto le'isa. Then we have a kli shemelachto leheta, and we also have muktzah machmas chisoron kis. Now, the previous Mishnayos we've mentioned a kli shemelachto le'isa, for example, a hammer. So the rules on that are very clear. A kli shemelachto le'isa cannot be moved on Shabbos unless it's l'tzorech gufay or l'tzorech mekomo. So therefore I could take a hammer and I could use it to crack a nut, or I could move it off the table or the chair which I need to use on Shabbos. L'tzorech gufay or mekomo, it's mutter. A kli shemelachto leheta, i.e. a bowl, a cup, a spoon, a knife, a fork, etc., they can be moved even not l'tzorech gufay mekomo. I can certainly use them for their intended use, but even if it's their non-intended use, that's no problem. The Mishnah is going to bring one opinion which argues that, which we'll discuss at the end of Mr. Shem. And then we're also going to discuss the category of muktzah machmas chisoron kis, which is a higher level of kli shemelachto issa, i.e. it's a special implement where the people are worried not to use them for anything other than their designated purpose, because they might damage them. So let's go through and we'll see the Mishnah and we'll see the Gedarim of each of these three categories. Rabbi Yosi says, Kol ha-kelim nitalin, all kelim can be taken, can be used, chutz min ha-masa ha-gadol v'yoseh shemacharesha. Apart from these two, a large saw and a yoseh shemacharesha, which is like a large knife used in the ploughing process to make a furrow, to cut into the ground and make a furrow which you can later plant. Now, so the pshat in the Mishnah is this: Kol ha-kelim refers to kelim which are kli shemelachto le'isa. So all the kelim, i.e. everything we mentioned till now, you can move them, nitolin, they can be used, l'tzorech gufa, l'tzorech mekomo. So as we've discussed, the kli shemelachto le'isa, for example a hammer, can be moved l'tzorech gufa, l'tzorech mekomo. If you need the place or you need them themselves for a heta usage, that would be mutter. Chutz min hamasa hagadol v'yoseh shemacharesha, except for these two items, because these two items, this big saw, which is not like the saw we learned in the previous Mishnah, which was a kli shemelachto le'isa, which was used to cut cheese, but rather a big saw which is normally used for two people. One person will stand on one end and the other on the other end, and they would sort of cut a log. They would both be pulling this saw together. Or the yoseh shemacharesha, which is this big implement, a big knife, which you'd attach to the back of a cow or an ox, and the ox would go along and you would cut a line into the ground. Those two kelim are muktzah machmas chisoron kis. They wouldn't be used for any purpose other than their designated purpose of cutting wood or cutting into the ground. And therefore, when it's a kli shemelachto le'isa, you can use them l'tzorech gufa and l'tzorech mekomo, but not if it's a muktzah machmas chisoron kis. The Shulchan Aruch in the beginning of Shin Ches gives other examples of kelim which are muktzah machmas chisoron kis, and they would be knives used for shchita or for mila. You wouldn't use these knives for regular eating, etc., because they're expensive, and therefore the owner would be very careful not to use them other than for shchita, for mila, etc. Fine. So therefore the Mishnah reads, Rabbi Yosi Omer, Kol ha-kelim nitalin, all kli shemelachto le'isa can be moved, l'tzorech gufa, l'tzorech mekomo, chutz min ha-masa hagadol v'yoseh shemacharesha, these two kelim, because they're muktzah machmas chisoron kis. Now, then it continues the Mishnah. Kol ha-kelim nitalin l'tzorech shelo l'tzorech. This is now going on kelim shemelachto leheta. Kli shemelachto leheta would be spoons, bowls, knives, forks, etc. They can be used l'tzorech for shelo l'tzorech. Now what does that mean? We have mentioned previously that a kli shemelachto le'isa, i.e. a hammer, can be used l'tzorech gufa, l'tzorech mekomo, but it cannot be used, for example, mechama l'tzel, or mipnei ganovim. In other words, if you've got a hammer which is sitting on the side of the front room, and the window is open, and you're worried that a thief, a ganav, might come past and just put his hand in and reach out and steal the hammer. So if you want to therefore move it inside the house, you can't do that on Shabbos, because that's not l'tzorech gufa, it's not l'tzorech mekomo. You're moving it mipnei ganovim. Or if the sun is beating down on it and you want to move it mechama l'tzel, out of the sun into the shade, if it's a kli shemelachto le'isa, you cannot do that. However, a klisha melachta leheta, for example, a nice glass, a bowl, a regular keli which we'd use on Shabbos, then you can use them letzorech v'shelo letzorech, i.e., you can use them letzorech gufon and mukaimon, if they're inherent needs, or for shelo letzorech, for example, to move the mechama letzel, you want it out of the sun, or you're worried about ganovim, etc., etc. That is pshat in this part of the Mishnah. Just by the way, what about moving a kli shemelachto leheta for a totally non-purposeful movement? For example, you've got a glass and you're just sort of moving it around for no reason whatsoever. It's not letzorech gufa mitzorech mukomo, and it's not even mechama letzel to move it out of the sun, or because you're worried about ganovim. You're just sort of fiddling with it and just playing around with it. So that is actually a machlokus, and the Maggid Mishnah says that if it's shelo letzorech klal, you cannot move it. And if I'm not mistaken, that's how he passes. So just to fiddle and to move something for no benefit, purpose whatsoever, that you cannot do. Okay, but either way, the rule is a kli shemelachta leheta can be used either letzorech gufa or letzorech makomo, and even shelo letzorech, i.e., mechama letzel, or to move it because of ganovim, or any purposeful movement would be mutter. Rabbi Nechemya, however, argues. He says, Ein nitalin el letzorech. It can only be used letzorech. Now, what does that mean? So the Bartanur explains as follows. Rabbi Nechemya omer ein nitalin el letzorech. Mefarish b'Gemara, the Gemara explains, letzorech tashmish hamyuchad bevad. It can only be moved, a kli shemelachta leheta, according to Rabbi Nechemya, letzorech tashmish hamyuchad bevad, for that designated function of that keli. V'lo letzorech tova acher, but not for any other thing. V'afilu letzorech gufa, even if it's letzorech gufa. Kugoyin, he gives an example. Sakin, a knife, a regular knife. Lachtoch boi bilvad shari, to use it for cutting purposes only is mutter. V'lo lismech boi sakara, but you can't put it under a bed to sort of raise the bed or to rest it on there. Ve'ein halach Rabbi Nechemya, but the halach is not like Rabbi Nechemya. So to summarize, with regard to a kli shemelachta leheta, there is a machlokas. Rabbi Nechemya says you can only move it letzorech, you can only use it, i.e., for its designated function, i.e., a knife to cut and for nothing else. We do not paskin like that. We paskin like the Tanakama, who says that kli shemelachta leheta can be moved letzorech for shelo letzorech, i.e., they can be used for their normal function, legufon, or shelo letzorech for any other purposeful moving. For example, to get them out of the sun, or because you don't want them on the floor there, it looks dirty, or because of ganovim, etc. For a non-purposeful movement, just for fiddling, for no constructive purpose whatsoever, shelo letzorech klal, there are opinions, the Maggid Mishnah says that you can't move it for that. A kli shemelachta le'issa, a hammer, for example, so that we've established you can move that letzorech gufo, letzorech mukomo, but not mechama letzel, or not mipnei ganovim. The higher level is the beginning of the Mishnah said that something which is muksa machmas chisaron kis, for example, the masul hagodl, or the yosich macharesha, or the sheichet's knife, or the moil's knife, etc. These things cannot be used either letzorech gufa mekoimoi, and certainly not mechama itself for any other purpose. For they are properly muksa, they cannot be moved on Shabbos. That is the end of Mishnah Dalet.